$612,000. That is the number one of these two people is about to hand the government. Same salary, same savings, same 30 years. One keeps that money, the other never sees it again. Meet John and Carla. They work at the same company. They earn the same $95,000 a year. They both decided on the same Monday to get serious about retirement. John walked into the meeting certain he had picked the smarter account. Carla walked out with the one that quietly wins. Neither of them felt the difference that day. The difference took 30 years to show up, and when it did, it was 6 figures deep. Here is the strange part. John did nothing wrong by the usual rules. He maxed his account. He never missed a year. He invested aggressively. By every visible measure, John is a retirement success story. But the account he chose has a hidden tax bill baked into it, a bill that grows silently while he sleeps. And the day he retires, that bill comes due all at once. Most people think the choice between a 401k and a Roth IRA is about which one grows faster. It isn't. Both grow at the same rate. The market does not care which box your money sits in. The real difference is who owns the growth. In one account, you own all of it. In the other, the government owns a slice, and that slice keeps getting bigger the better you invest. Run the numbers, and the gap is not small. The gap is a house. Let's keep this fair, because this is not a story about one account being good and one being evil. Both accounts are powerful. Both can make you wealthy. The problem is that almost nobody understands what they are actually choosing between. They hear 401k and think responsible. They hear Roth and think complicated, so they default. They let their employer pick. They let inertia pick. And inertia, it turns out, has a price tag of $600,000. By the end of this, you will understand the one question that decides everything. Not which account is better. That question has no answer. The real question is sharper, and once you can answer it for yourself, the whole thing becomes obvious. Here is what the data shows. So let's slow it down and build it from the ground up. Let me set the scene properly first, because the setup is where the whole thing gets decided. Picture that Monday meeting. A human resources rep slides a single sheet of paper across the table. 2 boxes to check. One says traditional, one says Roth. No explanation. No warning label, just 2 boxes and a pen. John reads the word traditional, and something in his brain relaxes. Traditional sounds safe. Traditional sounds like what responsible adults do. He checks it in about 4 seconds and moves on with his day. Carla stares at the same sheet for a full minute. She had read one article the night before, almost by accident. It mentioned a phrase that stuck with her. Pay the tax while it's small. She didn't fully understand it, but it nagged at her. So she checked the Roth box, felt slightly unsure, and went back to work. That single minute of hesitation, that one flicker of doubt, is worth $612,000. She just didn't know it yet. That's the thing about the biggest financial decisions. They almost never feel big. There's no alarm, no ceremony, no moment where the stakes announce themselves. It's a box on a form. It's a default setting. It's the option your coworker picked, so you picked it too. The decisions that shape your entire retirement get made in the time it takes to order coffee, and then they compound in the dark for 3 decades. Start with the basics, because the basics are where the confusion lives. A traditional 401k is a pre-tax account. Every dollar you put in comes out of your paycheck before the government taxes it. So if you earn $95,000 and contribute $24,000, you only pay income tax on the rest. That feels like a gift. That feels like free money right now. And in a sense, it is. Your tax bill this year drops. Your refund gets fatter. It is instant. It is visible. And the human brain loves things that are instant and visible. A Roth account is the mirror image. A Roth IRA takes your money after the government has already taxed it. You get no deduction, no fatter refund, no warm feeling in April. You put in dollars you have already paid tax on, and nothing happens today, which is exactly why most people ignore it. There is no immediate reward. The reward is 30 years away, sitting quietly, growing. So here is the trade, stated plainly. Traditional, skip the tax now, pay the tax later. Roth, pay the tax now, skip the tax later. That's the entire fight. Everything else is detail. But that detail is where the $600,000 hides. Let me anchor this in real numbers, because vague percentages never change anyone's mind. In 2026, the IRS lets you put $24,500 into a 401k. That's the ceiling for employee contributions. If you're 50 or older, you can add another $8,000 on top. And if you happen to be between 60 and 63, the catch-up jumps to $11,250. Those are real, current numbers straight from the IRS. The Roth IRA is smaller, much smaller. In 2026, you can only put in $7,500. If you're 50 or older, you get an extra $1,100. So right away, the 401k can hold more than 3, times what the Roth IRA can. That matters, and we'll come back to it. Because size is not the same as value, and this is the trap most people fall into. Now watch what happens over time. John maxes his traditional 401k, $24,500 a year, every year for 30 years. He invests it in a simple index fund earning about 8%, which is roughly the long-run average of the American stock market. He never touches it. He never panics. He just lets it compound. After 30 years, John's account is worth $2,775,000. Read that number again. From a person earning $95,000 a year, the market built nearly $2.8 million. That is the quiet miracle of compounding, and it is available to almost anyone with time and discipline. Here's what that growth actually looks like year by year because the shape of it matters. In the early years, the contributions do the heavy lifting. John puts in $24,000, the account grows a little, and it feels slow, painfully slow. After 5 years, he has maybe $150,000, and most of that is just money he deposited. This is the stage where most people quit. They don't see the magic yet, so they assume there is no magic. But then the curve bends. Around year 15, something shifts. The growth on his existing balance starts to outrun his yearly contribution. His money is now earning more than he's adding. By year 25, the account is throwing off $200,000 a year in pure growth. More than 8 times what John contributes. He isn't building the wealth anymore. The wealth is building itself. That is compounding, and it's why the last 10 years matter more than the first 20 combined. John looks at that balance and feels rich. And he should. But there is a ghost in that number. Every single dollar in that account has never been taxed, not the contributions. Not the growth, nothing. The government has been patiently waiting for 30 years, and now it wants its cut. And here's the part that stings. They don't just tax the money John put in, they tax all of it, including the $2 million of growth he created himself. When John retires and starts pulling money out, every withdrawal counts as ordinary income. Same as a paycheck, at a blended retirement tax rate of around 22%. The total tax on that account comes to roughly $612,000. $612,000. That is the money John never sees. That is the ghost finally collecting. Now here's what nobody tells you about that number. It didn't have to exist. Watch Carla. Carla can't put $24,000 into a Roth IRA. She's capped at $7,500. So to keep this fair, imagine Carla does 2 things. She captures her employer match inside a Roth 401k, and she fills her Roth IRA to the brim. Because a Roth 401k has the exact same contribution limit as the traditional one. Carla can also move $24,500 a year into Roth space. Same contribution, same fund, same 8%, same 30 years. Carla's balance at retirement is also $2,775,000. Identical. The market did not treat her differently. But when Carla retires and pulls her money out, the tax on every withdrawal is 0, not low, 0. She already paid the tax decades ago when the numbers were small. So the government has no claim on the growth. All of it is hers. Same salary, same savings, same market. One retires with $2.8 million. The other retires with $2.2 million after the tax collector leaves. The gap is $612,000. And it exists for one reason only, which box they chose on day one. Let that number breathe for a second, because $612,000 is not an abstraction. That is a paid-off house in most of America. That is 15 years of a comfortable retirement income. That is a full college education for 2 kids with money left over. That is the difference between leaving something behind and leaving nothing. And John didn't lose it in a crash. He didn't lose it to a scam. He lost it to a checkbox, quietly, over 30 years, without ever feeling a thing. That's what makes this the most expensive and visible decision in personal finance. And notice what did not cause the gap. It wasn't fees, it wasn't picking the wrong fund, it wasn't market timing. Both of them did everything the personal finance influencers tell you to do. They saved consistently. They stayed invested. They ignored the noise. They were model savers. The only thing that separated them was a single decision about when to pay the tax. And that one decision outweighed 30 years of identical discipline. That should tell you how much this choice actually matters relative to the things people obsess over. Now, before you close this and go convert everything to Roth, stop. Because I promise to keep this fair, and the honest version is more interesting than the clickbait version. There is a real argument on John's side, and if you ignore it, you'll make the opposite mistake. Here's what actually happens with a traditional 401k. Remember that deduction John got every year? That was real money. Contributing $24,500 pre-tax saved him roughly $5,000 in taxes each year, because that income never got taxed over 30 years. That's around $160,000 of tax savings that landed back in John's pocket along the way. And this is the piece almost every YouTube video skips. If John had taken that yearly tax savings and invested it too, his math changes completely. Those refunds, compounded at 8% for 30 years, would grow into a serious pile of money of their own. Invested consistently, that side account could be worth several $100,000. Suddenly, John's traditional strategy isn't losing by $600,000. It's close. In some scenarios, it even wins. So here's the real question, and it's not the one you've been asked. It's not Roth or traditional. It's this. Are you actually going to invest the tax refund? Or are you going to spend it? Be honest, because most people spend it. The refund hits the bank account and becomes a vacation, a new couch, a slightly nicer car. It evaporates. And the moment it evaporates, the traditional 401k quietly loses its best argument. This is the trap. The traditional 401k only wins on paper. In a world where you have the discipline to reinvest every dollar of tax savings for 30 years straight, the Roth wins in the real world where humans are human and refunds get spent. That's not a knock on you. That's just the data on how people behave. Now let me give you the second thing nobody explains, because it's the one that actually determines the winner. Forget behavior for a second. The pure math comes down to a single bet. Is your tax rate higher today or higher in retirement? If your tax rate will be lower in retirement than it is now, traditional wins. You skip the tax at your high working rate and pay it later at your low retirement rate. That's the whole pitch, and for high earners in their peak years, it's a genuinely strong one. A doctor earning $400,000 a year, deep in the top brackets, should probably lean traditional. Their rate now is brutal. Their rate later will almost certainly be lower. But if your tax rate will be higher in retirement or even just the same, Roth wins. And here's what most people get wrong. They assume their taxes will be lower in retirement. That's the default belief. It's also frequently false. Think about it. Tax rates today are historically low by the standards of American history. The national debt is enormous. Someone eventually has to pay for it. Betting that tax rates 30 years from now will be lower than today is a real bet. And it's not obviously a smart one. Let me kill the most common myth right here. Most people say, of course my taxes will be lower in retirement. I won't have a paycheck anymore. But look at what a successful saver's retirement actually looks like. You've got Social Security coming in. You've got money from your pension if you're lucky. And you've got forced withdrawals from a massive traditional account. Add those three streams together and plenty of retirees end up with more taxable income than they had in their working years. The I'll drop into a lower bracket assumption isn't a plan. It's a hope. And hope is a terrible thing to bet $600,000 on. There's more. When you retire with a giant traditional 401k, the government doesn't just wait politely. Starting at age 73, they force you to withdraw a percentage every year, whether you need the money or not. These are called required minimum distributions, and they can shove you into a higher tax bracket in retirement than you were ever in while working. A $2.8 million traditional account throws off enormous forced withdrawals. Your low retirement tax rate assumption quietly collapses. The Roth has no such rule. A Roth IRA has zero required minimum distributions for as long as you live. And thanks to recent law changes, the Roth 401k dropped its lifetime withdrawal requirement too. So your Roth money can sit and compound, untouched, tax-free for your entire life. You can pass it to your kids. It becomes a tax-free inheritance, which the traditional account can never be. Here's what actually happens to most people, and it's sobering. The median 401k balance in America is around $38,000. Not the average, the median, the middle. For workers in their late 50s, the median is under $100,000. Most people are nowhere near the $2.8 million in our example, which means for most people, their retirement tax rate really might be low, and traditional really might be fine. The math is not one size fits all. It bends to your actual numbers. Here's what nobody tells you about the deduction, the part, that makes it so dangerous. It doesn't feel like borrowing, but that's exactly what it is. When the government hands you a tax break on your traditional contribution, they are not forgiving the tax. They are deferring it. They are lending you your own future tax bill and letting you feel rich in the meantime. It's a loan disguised as a gift, and the interest is charged on the entire grown balance, not just what you borrowed. You skip tax on a $24,000 seed, and 30 years later you pay tax on a $200,000 tree. That is the worst loan in personal finance. And millions of people sign up for it because the paperwork calls it a benefit. There's a version of this trap for high earners too, and it has a name: the backdoor Roth. Because the Roth IRA has income limits, people who earn too much are told they simply can't have one. But there's a legal maneuver. You contribute to a traditional IRA, which has no income limit, then convert it to a Roth shortly after. It's a side door into tax-free growth that the wealthy use constantly and the average person has never heard of. The point isn't the mechanics. The point is that the tax code is full of doors. And the people who learn where they are walk through them while everyone else stands in the lobby. But there's a catch inside the catch. There is one thing the 401k has that the Roth IRA simply cannot match. And skipping it is the most expensive mistake in this entire video. The employer match. When your company offers to match your 401k contributions, say, 50 cents on the dollar up to 6%, that is not a benefit. That is a raise. It is a 100% guaranteed instant return on your money. No investment on earth reliably beats an immediate 50% match. A Roth IRA has no match. It can't. It's a personal account not tied to your job. So if you skip your 401k entirely to fund a Roth IRA, you might be walking past thousands of dollars of free money every single year. Over a career. An abandoned match can cost more than the entire Roth versus traditional tax question we just spent all this time on. Read that twice. So the smart move, the one that quietly beats almost everyone, is not either or. It's an order of operations. First, contribute to your 401k up to the full employer match. Grab every dollar of free money. Then once the match is captured, pivot to a Roth IRA and fill it completely because that money grows tax-free forever. Then, if you still have money left, go back and finish maxing the 401k. Match first, Roth second, max third. That single sequence is worth more than any account label. And there's one more wrinkle most people never learn about, which quietly locks a lot of high earners out of the Roth IRA: income limits. In 2026, if you're single and earn more than about $165,000, your ability to contribute to a Roth IRA starts phasing out and eventually it disappears entirely. Married couples get shut out above around $246,000, the Roth IRA. The account with the best tax treatment in the entire system is legally closed to the people who could benefit from tax-free growth the most. But the Roth 401k has no income limit at all. None. A person earning $500,000 can pour money into a Roth 401k freely. So when high earners are told you make too much for a Roth, that's only half true. The Roth IRA door is closed. The Roth 401k door is wide open. Most people never learn the difference, and it costs them. Here is the group that should almost never choose traditional. Anyone young, anyone early in their career. Anyone in a low tax bracket right now. If you're in your 20s earning $50,000, your tax rate today is about as low as it will ever be, paying tax now at that tiny rate. And then letting 40 years of growth come out completely tax-free is one of the closest things to a free lunch the tax code offers the younger you are. The more the Roth wins, because the more of your final balance is growth, the government never gets to touch. Time turns the Roth from a good idea into an overwhelming one. Here's the move the actual professionals make, and it's the most boring, most powerful idea in this whole conversation. They don't pick one. They build tax diversification. Some money in traditional, some money in Roth. Why? Because nobody can predict tax rates 30 years out. So the pros refuse to bet the whole thing on one guess. In retirement, they pull from the traditional account up to the top of a low bracket, then switch to the tax-free Roth for anything above that. They control their own tax rate year by year. That flexibility, having two buckets taxed two different ways, is worth more than being right about the future. You don't have to predict the weather if you carry both a coat and sunglasses. Let's put the whole thing together, because now the picture is clear. The traditional 401k gives you a tax break today and a tax bill tomorrow. It wins if your future tax rate is lower than today's, and if you actually invest the tax savings. The Roth gives you no break today and no bill tomorrow. It wins if your future tax rate is the same or higher. And it wins by default for anyone who won't reliably reinvest their refund. The 401k holds more and often comes with free matching money. The Roth IRA holds less but grows completely tax-free with no forced withdrawals, ever. Here's the counterintuitive twist that reframes everything. The account that costs you more money today is almost always the one that makes you richer. The Roth hurts now. It gives you nothing in April, and that pain is exactly why it wins. Because it forces you to pay the tax when your balance is small and your rate is known, instead of when your balance is a fortune and your rate is a mystery. Say that differently. You can pay tax on the seed or you can pay tax on the harvest. The seed is cheap, the harvest is a fortune. Choose your moment. That's the real math. Not which account grows faster, they grow the same. Not which one feels better today. The wrong one feels better today. The math is a bet on your future tax rate and a bet on your own discipline. And for most ordinary people, in most ordinary situations, paying the tax now, while it's small and certain, quietly wins. So the next time someone tells you the 401k is obviously the smart choice because of the tax break, ask them one question. What do you think your tax rate will be in 30 years? If they can answer that honestly, they'll understand there is no default answer. There's only your answer. And if they can't answer it, then they were never really choosing. They were just guessing and hoping the government would be generous later. If this showed you something you didn't know was happening with your money, subscribe to Desmond Wealth and turn on the notifications. We break down the hidden math behind the financial decisions you face every day. No hustle culture, no shame, just the numbers laid out honestly so you can make the decision that matches your reality. Not someone else's sales pitch, because the $612,000 difference was never about the account. It was about whether anyone ever showed you the real math. Now someone has.